Here we go.
Yo, yo,
How's it sound?
sounds decent. Tell me how I sound.
Sound great on my end.
Okay, cool. I did an IG live yesterday and my audio was horrible.
Oh, is that right? Was it for the AirPods?
It was the AirPods, but I think the problem was having my phone and the iPad nearby each other, and I think the AirPods was probably connected to both.
Echoing a
And I
little
think
bit.
that was causing a transmission issue.
I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds great. So
Okay, cool.
far,
Check. Audio sounds good?
everybody in the chat, audio sound good? On
Check.
my
One,
end,
two,
it
two,
sounds
two.
great. Everything looks great.
Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity. I know we've been trying to make this happen for a minute now,
Facts.
but we're making it happen, and I am very appreciative. Like I said, this is Hip Hop History Lesson, episode 164. I'm with the legendary Mixmaster Ice from UTFO. Thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday.
Thank you for having me, man. When you said 164, you doing some things there. You getting up there.
I'm getting up there, all
Hey,
in
I'm I'm
within a year. Yeah,
I'm I'm blessed and glad to be a part of the catalog. Thank you.
no problem. For everybody who may not have known or maybe have simply forgotten, can you take us back to where you're born and raised?
Born in Harlem, New York, and raised in Brooklyn since the age of 3.
And then transitioning to,
And I currently live in Columbus, Ohio.
okay, so we're talking Brooklyn teenage years.
Yes, definitely.
So take us back to a day in the life, Mixmaster Ice, growing up in Brooklyn, teenage years.
All right. From the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn, uh, wild and free. Hip hop's taking off, and just trying to find, which of the elements I'm going to get involved with. Which for me started off rapping and then quickly transitioning into DJing. And uh, you know, uh, typical Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? Graduated from Wingate High School, first
Okay.
high school John Dewey, but graduated from Wingate. So the section of Brooklyn that I'm from is East Flatbush, and Wingate is one of the zone schools.
Okay.
So that was one of the places. I got my education and stuff. But from a hip hop perspective, we were very rich and in tuned with what was going on with hip hop. It was thriving, and East Flatbush definitely was one of the cities embracing it and looking for any opportunity to add to the culture.
Right. Before getting into music, were there any obstacles that you had to endure growing up in Brooklyn in your teenage years?
Definitely. For myself, um, and this was early on, and right before UTFO, we started making records. Me myself started slipping a little bit, hanging out in the street a little too much, and found myself getting in trouble with the law. So early on, that was challenging, trying to balance, hip hop and the streets and graduating from high school, trying to juggle all that, you know, being a product of the environment and what's going on around you, a couple of bad decisions early in the game that I was able to rectify and get myself together. But that was an obstacle for me personally, um, transitioning from doing knucklehead stuff to being focused to, what would be a lifelong mission to come. Once you figure out the purpose, you can see the journey. You know what I
Right.
mean? When you're young, you can be dumb. And where I came from, it was a lot of knuckleheads. I was around a lot of knuckleheads. I got involved with knucklehead stuff, and but God gave me a second chance, and I was
Right.
sincere about wanting a second chance. And you know, hip hop definitely was a vehicle that I could personally say gave me an outlet and another alternative from doing knucklehead type stuff. You know what I mean?
Right.
I got in trouble one time, and that was enough for me to realize that's not the direction I want to go. I want to make my mom proud and stuff like that. So I started slipping. But hip hop definitely gave me hip hop was definitely a vessel for myself, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people. It gives you that outlet and another alternative.
Right. Before music, what other interests did Mixmaster Ice have throughout the teenage years?
Oh man, what else did I like? I love sports. Love basketball, love football, boxing. Boxing's my favorite sport. Um, I love chess. Growing up, I was a chess player. So I love chess. Of course, DJing became a hobby early on. And, but those things in particular, I was a big, I love sports, love DJing, of course, and, and chess. I love playing the game of chess. Yeah.
Very dope. Very dope. Music wise, like I said, before music, before getting into it, what were some of your early influences? Who were you listening to that was drawing you in?
Everything, everything, salute to my dad, my dad that raised me, he was a big music buff in the house. So growing up, he was up on all the latest technology. He had the eight tracks, he had the reel to reels, he had the cassettes, and he had a lot of vinyl. So as a young guy growing up, you're not allowed to touch your parents' stuff. That stuff is golden.
Right.
But he had a lot of records. He had a lot of vinyl. So he played all the soul music, all the Marvin Gaye's, the stylistics. He loved funk. So I grew up listening to all the funk. He was heavy into the James Brown, which was very beneficial to me as I transitioned to a DJ. So growing up, that we had a couple of different stations that played different music. So we had disco, we had the funk, we had R&B, we had soul, we had reggae was real heavy when I was growing up. The part of East Flatbush I'm from, by the time I started DJing, which was 80, the neighborhood had became a very populated West Indian neighborhood. Early when I moved to Brooklyn, that neighborhood was mixed between Jews, uh, Black Americans, and a little bit of West Indians. But by the time the 80s and late 70s was coming in, a lot of influx of West Indians was flocking towards East Flatbush. So I grew up around a lot of West Indians, all the different islands. So heavily influenced from the soca music, the reggae, the Spanish music, the Puerto Rican music, what they call reggaeton now. All of that stuff I was embraced with, and then in the you had a lot that had some as MTV and different things is on, we get you're exposed to a lot of rock groups that was hot, like the Bee Gees and those type of groups and Hall and Oates. So just everything, man. But my dad was real heavy on that soul music, stylistics, the OJs, James Brown, just all of that stuff. I grew up on all that real heavy. So when I was transitioning into a DJ, and they're playing the breaks, a lot of those records, I had some of those records in the house. That was my dad. I just had to find a way to sneak it from him and then go find another copy so I could have two. But a big part of my musical journey early in the game came from my mom and dad playing a lot of that stuff in the house. My dad played a lot of music in the house. So I was very familiar with where hip hop was going to go from a breakbeat standpoint, the funky part of the record. I was very familiar with a lot of those records because my dad played a lot of those records in the house.
Right. Can you talk about the scene earlier on? What were you witnessing as far as hip hop in Brooklyn?
It was moving like a tidal wave. Graduating from eighth grade, my eighth grade prom, at the school dance, they had a DJ. So I went to a school called Prince of Peace. It was a private school I went to that I graduated from in the eighth grade. And we had a prom dance. And at this prom dance, they had a DJ and a couple of guys on the microphone. Now this is 79. So and I don't even know if we was calling it hip hop yet by then. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not even sure. But they on the mic, crowd rocking, and getting everybody into it. So I'm just sitting there peeping. This is my first time really seeing the DJ. He got the lights going. Guys is on the microphone. They got the echo chamber going on. I'm like, yo, this is crazy. And this is what they calling hip hop. Now, right around the same time in '79, hip hop is starting to get commercialized on the radio. We had it at the block parties, but now you're starting to hear it on the radio. People are actually making hip hop records. And one of the first hip hop records was King Tim III by the Fatback Band. And then you also had, shortly after that, on the radio was Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. So now you're hearing this over the airwaves. You already been dipping and dabbing with it in the streets and seeing it at the block parties, but now it's on the radio. So this hip hop thing is taking off. And, Brooklyn was no exception. We was right on top of that. You know what I'm saying? Brooklyn had to earn this respect because early in the game, early 80s, when they would have those legendary battles and parties in the Bronx and in Harlem World at different places, Brooklyn wasn't getting no love yet. It was all about the Boogie Down Bronx and Uptown. That's all they was shouting out. Boogie Down Bronx and Uptown. So Brooklyn had to earn their respect. And once they did earn it, Brooklyn never looked back. Once they started saying Brooklyn's in the house, that was it. Brooklyn never looked back. But all the boroughs was just engulfed in this hip hop thing, and everybody's trying to find their way to embrace it. I'm from the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn, so there was crews in my neighborhood that we all the crews were battle crews. Everybody want their respect, and the only way to get respect is being dope or maybe battling somebody or something along those lines. But you had my group UTFO, which at the time was called UFO, same meaning, Untouchable Force Organization. You had a group called QPSL. You had the Short Shot 4, Howie T's group, the Short Shot 4 MCs. Later on, turned into Count Disco. You had we had a lot of DJs in Brooklyn. You had DJ Fashion, Divine Sounds. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but the point I'm making is Brooklyn was just striving. Then you had the reggae DJs, which were very big and had those massive sound systems. So, that's going on in Brooklyn at the same time too. You got the hip hop with the breaks. You got the combination going on with the reggae and them sound systems. So, from a Brooklyn perspective, hip hop is taking off. And being a young guy in it, I'm just sucking it all up. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to figure out where I fit in. So right. I fell in love with DJing. I first started off writing rhymes. It didn't cost no money to write rhymes. So that's how I got first involved. Then got my first touch of the turntables. And I said, this is it for me. I knew that's what I wanted to do once I touched them turntables. I knew it. I said, I'm going to learn this thing right here. This is what I want to do. And myself and the late, great educated rapper, may he rest in peace, me and him started a DJ crew together called the Jam-A-Lot Crew. This was in 1980. So it was me, him, and a couple of other DJs from the neighborhood. We would combine and put all our equipment together and try to make a set out of it because nobody had a set. So one guy had a turntable, one guy had a mixer, one guy had records, one guy had speakers, one guy had a basement we could keep it in because his mom would be at work all night. So that's how I started off, very humble beginnings. And,
right.
Yeah, but go ahead though.
What kind of